So, welcome to the Why So Serious podcast. I'm here with my additional, both same level host,
Oh boy.
Don Kwame Bathy, as
Look,
also,
I'm the co-host apparently. I pulled the wrong straw.
I don't know. I might just be like bringing you coffee after this morning. And might mess up with the technical.
And donuts, sugar-free donuts, sugar-free donuts. Thank you.
You doing? Are you doing the I,
Sugar-free
so
month.
many different diets and stuff like that. I can't keep up with them all.
I know.
So yes, and of course we have a special guest here. Her name is Natasha Dean, and we were gonna. You know what? I'm just gonna let you introduce yourself. It's probably much
Good
easier.
idea.
All
Yeah.
right. So, hi everyone. I'm so grateful to be part of this podcast. My name is Natasha Dean, and I was from Winnipeg, and I moved to Toronto. And I think we're gonna have a really great discussion today on all the topics.
Ooh,
Indeed.
very cool.
And as usual, I'm Kwamatron, Kwame John. Yeah, Natasha, thank you so much for joining us. It's a Sunday morning. This is probably a very good time for you and others to be, dreaming about whatever, getting some more rest. But thank you so much for joining us. We really
No
appreciate your
problem.
time
I'm
here.
really excited.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm gonna start off. We kind of have a little bit of a rough. We like to go unscripted, of course, just to make it. I mean, just real, right? We keep it real,
Make it
basically.
organic.
Organic, right?
Yeah.
Organic is the more conservative term. Keep it real is more like a come from the street term, right? But we like to keep it real and organic. How about
That's
that?
we go double, baby.
Double. That's
But
extra real on this one. So, um, I was gonna start off with again a little bit more about Natasha, of course, since she's the guest. You know, one reason why I wanted to have Natasha on our podcast is we're also gonna obviously when we post this, I'm gonna post up her IG and tag you as well, Natasha. So, but if you get a chance, Natasha has on her Instagram, she has these interesting, you know what I'm getting at, Natasha. We talked a
yes,
little bit about it
yes.
yesterday, but these interesting questions and polls that you put up, and maybe like tell us a little bit about that, how that's going, or what you think.
Yeah. So it started off when, quarantine started in COVID, and I thought, randomly put up some questions and see what happens on my Instagram. And nowhere it just blew up. And people were sharing it and tagging people and
Hmm.
just really engaging. And it got to a point where people were like, hey, can I ask a question? But I want to be anonymous. And so it was really awesome because I got these really authentic questions from all over the world, from, Europe to the States, Canada. And it was just questions that people wanted honest opinions about. So, for example, one of them was, are you attracted to money or look when it comes to, men loving women? And so you just got like a lot of interesting answers, and it started up a whole bunch of different conversations, and now it's become a big thing. So yeah, it's been really interesting.
Cool. Yeah. Well, one of the questions, as we're going to get into this right here, we said one of the questions that I thought was really interesting, and a lot of people are going to have comments about this, right? And John, you saw it too. And one of the things we like to say, we've been saying on this podcast is basically we don't really hold back on anything. We're going to give our opinions and we're going to be still respectful in that, right? But this is a question I think we'll ask the questions and put out topics there that people sometimes wonder about, maybe are afraid to
Talk
get
about.
right into, right? So this one is, um, can men and women be just friends?
Yeah,
That's something that's like,
that was interesting.
I
yeah,
I I, sorry, Sean.
no,
I
no,
just
good.
want to ask very quickly, Natasha, if you can
Yeah.
just rewind, what are some of the interesting questions you've gotten on your IG posts?
Okay, yeah, some other ones just
Oh, like the ones regarding polls?
Yes.
Yeah. So a lot of people want to know men's point of view on things and women's point of view on things, and a lot of it is relationship based. So
Hmm.
again, women really want to know about what physical parts are men attracted to. That's the biggest thing. And men really want to know, what they can do to attract women, and
Hmm.
like what type of dates or what type of things could he do to lure her in. So it's interesting to see the view, but a lot of it is like feeding. A lot of it is again money, physical. Uh, it's a lot of questions that I think a lot of people want to know the answer to, and because it's anonymous, people are being honest, and so
Yeah, you're
sometimes
right.
a lot of people are taken back by what the answer is. You're like, wow, people were legit saying healthy health.
I actually like the anonymous part,
Yeah,
because now they can fully like give
let
like
put it out.
unfiltered.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, Sean and I, we talk a lot about relationships, not so much on here so far. When we've talked about a little bit,
A little bit, yeah.
but to Sean's question, about men being friends with women, is it possible?
Yeah,
That's a huge one. That's a
Mhm.
huge one.
yeah.
And we had a guest on a few weeks ago, and I asked a question. Men and boys are taught and told how to treat women and girls.
Mhm.
Pull up the chair, call her, approach her, all those things. But in your honest opinion, do you think women are taught how to treat men?
Ooh, that's a good question.
And you can't be anonymous because you're here now.
Yeah, yeah, you know the answer. Actually, it's
Can't
funny
be.
on my polls. I actually give my answer so that everyone can see. So
Mhm.
I let them know what I actually feel.
Good.
Yeah.
That's a great question. Personally, for me, what my opinion is on it is that it's really dependent on your relationship with your father as a woman because it's your first time being treated and meeting a man for the first time. So I think that how your father shows you what you should be looking for respect and how you should be treated is a big part on how we are treating men. Do I think everybody's like that? No. I think it really depends on, again, the upbringing, but also our environment and what we're seeing and who we choose to be around to show us if we should be treating men a specific way. And a lot of us are taught that it's more guys that should be showing us respect and guys should be doing everything for us. But I do think times are changing and that we as women need to do a little bit more to show interest and respect to men as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's pretty thorough answer. I think yeah, I mean that and like you said, I think I find and John can speak to this as well after. But that was one thing that we just in different conversations that there was like a sort of a light bulb that went off and I think we've probably even seen some other posts from other Instagrammers and things like that about that. Um, and not just to put it all on one person or all on a woman, but I think that might be an issue, or we've all seen it, right? Where, like you said, where part of an interaction sometimes is, like you said, there are some women where it's, and I think it's maybe more so we, as from our point of view, we know, us, our friends, and so on, like and it might be this opposite where our mothers, right? Your relationship are with
Right.
men's relationships with their mothers, right? Their mother will say, "Hey, you know what? You're taking that girl out. Make sure you do this, and make
Yeah.
sure
Yeah.
don't act like that. Like tuck in your shirt, do whatever it is. Like you know what I mean? They'll tell us all this kind of stuff, right? And make sure you pull out the chair for her and all that, right? Um. So yeah, and I guess yeah, maybe what it comes to is it's obviously there has to be like a meet in the middle kind of thing happening, right?
Yeah.
With that. So yeah, I mean, John, do you have anything else to add to that? I know we're going to get into the big question about can men and women be just friends, but
Of
anything more on
course.
that before we get into that?
Yeah, I mean, Natasha, I think you brought a powerful point. What you're really saying is the foundation starts in the home.
Yeah.
So, think of um, the hordes of young girls and young boys who are growing up in a single
I
parent
know.
environment, right? So for me, it was just me and my mom, right? My dad came into my life when I was like later in my life. I knew him as a kid, but we didn't live together. So I wasn't interacting with him, didn't get all those little incredible advices
Right.
on women. So my mom I can't really say she taught me how to treat women, but I saw from like her boyfriends how they
Right.
treated her,
Yeah.
like not in a good way. And then there were some really awesome boyfriends that I'm like, please stay around, please. Um, but think of it this way here: the nuclear family has changed, and I think it's going to get worse. Sad to say, I'm not trying to be
Okay.
pessimistic, but it's just the reality is that as we have more divorces, as we have more, um, you know, like teenage pregnancies out of wedlock, like all these things are happening. So kids are growing up without, knowing who their father is, most predominantly. So if it's a girl and no dad's in the house, and she gets to like 12 and 14 and so on, her whole view of the world is really from her mom, right?
Exactly.
Especially if that mom didn't have a good experience with men, she's going to learn that. And fathers are not, the heroes of society these days. When it comes to Mother's Day and Mother's Day gets like 75% of the attention.
Right.
Yeah. I think
Professional
so.
athlete,
Always
professional
been.
athlete, yeah. Professional athlete makes it to the NFL or NBA or wherever, it's mom, right? And then they look at the camera pans out to the mom or the mom's seat, and it's like the mom, some aunts, and there's no man. So there's this deeper issue that I have other thoughts on, um, but I think it's imperative that young girls, especially, understand what are the needs of men or what goes through their minds. Um, and it's a massive question. I really thank you for what you said. I think it's a great way to for us to look at it and the impact of your
Oh,
mother
for
and
sure.
father in your life.
And I think I was just reading that a father is such an important piece for a child in both ways. One is for a son to show him how to be a man and how to treat a woman by like you said, to your mother. And then second, for a woman, it's to show her how to be treated by a man. So like I was saying, my relationship with my dad is phenomenal, and he would take me on dates, and he would, for Valentine's Day, always give me roses or chocolates so that I had something. And it was just embedded in me now to look for that as a standard, for when I'm dating or when I'm with somebody. So
That's massive.
man is very
That's absolutely massive. I want to add to that though, is I've dated girls who didn't have a father,
right.
and the contrast to girls that grew up with their fathers. And I want to. I mean, I should qualify that better. Girls that did not have a relationship with their father,
Yeah.
and girls that did have a good relationship with their father. Right? Just because daddy was not in her life, maybe there's an uncle or somebody else, and just because the father was in their life doesn't always mean they had a good relationship as
Right.
well. So I've seen the contrast, and the contrast usually boils down to one thing: respect for men. Just that one thing. Men love. It is our fuel. We love respect. Like if you respect your man, he will walk on coals for you, work 5 jobs. Like he'll do anything for you if he gets respect. And women on the other side, they love to be loved. That's their fuel. If you show a woman love, that's in that's really her version of respect.
Yeah.
And if you show a man respect, that's his version of being loved. So if you're not respecting your man, he's like your value in his eyes starts to dwindle. If you're not loving your woman, your value in her eyes starts to dwindle, and then you start looking elsewhere. So love and respect is really the key here.
I think just to add to that, I think what's lacking in a lot of relationships, and just from people that I talk to, is when someone is not getting the love or the respect that they want, they're scared to tell their partner, or vice versa, the partner is not ready to hear it or doesn't want to change or hear it. So once you have that communication piece, I think, and your open communication, and if you feel safe talking about, I'm not happy with this, I need you to change and do this, that's when a relationship becomes powerful. But we're not really taught, it depends on your home life, right? Were you taught to talk about your problems, or did you keep it internally and just deal with it?
Right. Yeah, that's true.
You nodding there.
Yeah, yeah, it's
That's true.
that's huge, right? I mean, um, yeah, I don't know if there's a whole lot more to say about that. That's, I mean, or it could be a whole lot more to say about that. That's a whole
The
big
whole topic.
topic, right? Which we run into often on this show too, where we start talking about something and then we're like, oh, that could be and maybe that gives us endless
Another
things to talk
topic.
about, right? We just put that in our back pocket and be like, that's another show. But maybe it comes down to also the again, when we're sort of getting back to our question, I know still kind of on the same topic because it is relationships. But if we're talking about men and women, the age-old question, I mean, I'll put it out to you first, and we'll maybe do a little bit of kind of a round table kind of thing, Natasha. With, I mean, what do you think? You put that question out there on your
Yeah.
polls, and you maybe can let us know what people thought and what your thought was on it. Because I kind of I know you always put your thought on it. Everybody else is
Yes,
anonymous.
I do.
So what was your thought on that? Can men and women be just friends?
So, one, I'll give you what the poll answer was. So, majority of people voted. It was a lot, and a lot said they did not feel comfortable with their partner having opposite sex as a friend.
Okay.
So, but my opinion is, for me, I have some really core male best friends that I've had since I was like 15 years old.
Right.
And they're like family to me. And it would be really important for me with my partner, whoever I end up, being with, that that person's still going to be in my life and they need to be comfortable with it. I think it's just about getting them to know each other and incorporating, whoever I'm with to know about my guy friends. I think it becomes a problem when you separate the two.
Hmm.
Younger Natasha would not have been comfortable with it,
No.
but I wasn't secure in myself. So when you start to become more confident and you get a little older and you're just like, I want to be able to be with somebody that I don't have to worry about that. I could say I'm going out with him and I want him to be okay with that. And if he wants to come along, great. So for me, I think that I would love to have my guy friends still in my life. And it would be a deal breaker for me if somebody wasn't okay with that.
I'm gonna put it out to John. What do you think? What do you think about that?
Yeah.
Natasha's putting me on the spot here.
What is your answer?
The younger me had a ton of female friends,
Right.
a ton, and that's its own show. Like why that was. Um, Today, not so many. There are a couple of female friends.
Yeah.
Um, but the question is, can they? That's the question, the answer is actually absolutely yes.
I agree.
Um, and and the answer it's yes with a caveat of no. So it's yes is that like what is the threat? Like that's the issue here. The threat is sex. Like let's
Yeah.
everyone listening, it's sex, right?
Mhm.
It's it's hey Deborah, I know you've been going to high school all these years, and now we're in college, but I just want you to know I've had a crush on you since grade 9.
Mhm.
Are you serious? Listen, I love you as a big brother, and I'm so sorry. Oh, crack. Like, done. That's first scenario. Second scenario is, um, Deborah, I had a crush on you since grade 9. I just love you. Oh, me too, Kwamatron. I was just waiting for you to, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds more like a movie to me, though.
That's my movie, okay? That's my
But
movie.
who knows? I mean, it happens. It happens too.
The next one is, I've had a crush on you, blah, blah, but she is with someone.
Right.
Mhm.
And whether she's like, I've been in love with you too, or you're my big brother, right? The impact of her now telling her guy, right, or girl, and saying, man, can you believe Kwamatron's been in love with me? I knew it. You can't trust guys.
Mhm.
I'm a guy. That's what I'm thinking.
Um,
When I saw you in that skirt, I wasn't thinking buddy, buddy, buddy.
Right.
So I've actually had friends where I've had zero attraction to them. That's the issue. Like
Mhm.
zero. Like I look at you as like if there's ever gonna be a kiss, it'll be on your cheek. It'll be a hug, and I'm hugging you like my sister.
Right.
I'm coming to your wedding, all that kind of stuff. On the other side, I've had female friends where I'm like, man, I'm just waiting. I'm just wait. I've turned to a
lurking,
lion.
lurking in the shadows, eh?
I'm just waiting for the moment of weakness
Right.
because there are some guys who are they're waiting for you to break up.
Right.
They're waiting for you to break up, and I'm gonna come over, pizza, some wine. We're gonna talk. We're gonna hold each other. We're gonna just talk. We might just fall asleep together. And and he's just hoping. So there is that. But I've had some female friends where I was thoroughly attracted to them,
Right.
but I did not have the confidence to say, hey, Deborah, so I just stayed in the friend zone
Right.
by default. And then there were some where I'm like, no, I love your mind. I love the conversation. Like, and I love hanging around you and and it turned into just friends in that sense. Um, but you can't ever, no one should ever be so naive as to think that, if you're a male and there's a female and there's a level of attractiveness on each side, that it may not happen, especially when each of them opens their mouth and they're like, wow, you're a great person.
Mhm.
I'm dating a real jerk right now. Like,
Hey,
you'd
you're
be
pointing at me
awesome.
on the screen. You're pointing at me, man. When you said real,
Um, um,
what's going on here, man? No.
so that's what I think is it's attraction issue. It's about sex. That's the real threat.
Mhm.
And I have not ever had a problem. I'm married now. Never had a problem with my female, my lady having a male friend, except once.
Oh,
And I
Oh.
almost got, oh, sorry, twice. Oh, crap. Oh, boy.
Oh, so we're getting some juicy stuff here.
yeah.
Twice. And
I'm interested. I'm leaning forward and doing
Yeah, I'm
this.
like, what is coming up next?
so both of them turned into a fight.
Oh,
Wow.
One initiated by me. Actually, no, both initiated by me. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, both initiated by me. And that was because the first guy, and they're both in Winnipeg, by the way.
Oh,
The first guy, we're in this club setting, and she and that guy go to the same school together. I will
mhm.
not say which school. Actually, I can. Shaftesbury. And this guy was just like, I think whenever he was around her, I just didn't like the vibe. You
Right.
know, I didn't like the vibe. And I didn't, there's no fists. It was just words and like nasty looks. And he got the hint, this guy does not like me, and vice versa. The
right.
second guy, um, he ended up, doing the nasty with her.
Wow.
And it's just
Well, I
like,
guess that's a good reason not to like him.
Yeah.
I guess that
so
that counts as a
he ended up having a bit of fun with her, and she told me about it, and I just lost it.
right,
Um, and the thing is, me and that guy went to the same high school together.
right.
Wow.
And when she told me this, we ended up, me and my friends went out to a party on a Friday night somewhere in Transcona, and I saw him, and words were exchanged. And let's just say Monday morning came, I had like, a bruise on my eye,
Oh
and
my gosh.
he had an issue on himself. And it was just like we were two ships that will never ever meet. And ironically, I think a few years after high school, probably like 4 years after I saw him, and we were like super cool. We were in like an exchange numbers.
Right.
And that girl in particular, like she was gone. She was not in our lives, right? She moved to the States or something. So what's the point here? um, the inevitability is, there's a threat, no matter whether, who you're with, they'll have some kind of friend.
Right.
And then the other side too is you're a lady who might have a female friend and she may like you. And your guy may never like figure that out because girls are just like very emotionally connected in those, in that way.
Right.
So I would advise anybody, look, um, stay calm, stay cool about it. If she has a friend, if that person is going above and beyond what you think a friend should be, like sleepovers,
Yeah.
like he's very, very touchy with her, and just, there's a level where you're just like, whoa, please, like, don't go there. Then you should
Yeah.
step in. But on a regular basis, I think you should just let it be.
Can I just add to that for a second? So, do you think though that it's about the person's character? It shouldn't. I think personally that any influence that comes and tempts your partner can do it, and hopefully it comes down to that person's character and the love for you. That's going to be like, you can try as much as you want, but I'm not losing this. So, in your marriage, for example, if she has friends, I think if you have that bond and you trust her, it doesn't matter how many men hit on her because she's never going to give up what she has with you. Just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, um I think that's great too. I mean, that's as far as there's a bunch of things there. So I mean, my take on the topic is sort of a little bit listening to both of you. First of all, maybe it's an advantage there, but I think some of the answer is, for me, I think the answer is yes. The men and women can be friends, but I also think, I mean, it's going to sound a little bit, um, it's going to sound a little bit odd when I say this, but I think part of it does depend on the level of how level of attractiveness, right? As far as like how each person is attracted to each other. If not to say that you need to have ugly friends of the opposite sex or whatever, but but you know what I'm saying? But I think too, I mean, if there's some level of attractiveness at the beginning, like there's some sort of attraction between them, then that is, it's possibility that it can grow. But I also agree with, and I think you know, Natasha, you said it, John, you gave some examples too about just the maturity level too, right? I mean, I think especially when we were all like younger, I mean, there's always that, as far as the even just the growing up, the sense of responsibility and so on, like just in general, right? Like as
Right.
you're younger, you don't have, with anything, right? It's sort of like, okay, well, do the dishes, that can wait, whatever. Like you don't have that sense of responsibility. So as you grow older, not for everyone, mind you, but hopefully, most people's maturity level should increase, right?
Right.
There are those people that don't sort of sit or don't mature as fast or whatever. But I think when you get to that level, then you're more conscious of it, right? I mean, even if you have a friend, even if there is some sort of attraction there, if you have a partner, you're
Hmm.
kind of in the mode when okay, you know what, this person is just a friend. And even if they were to, as you said, if they were to let you know, um, like, hey, Sean, you know what, I really actually kind of have a thing for you, and they would be like, well, I appreciate it, but I'm actually that I'm involved with this person right now. So,
Just to add
I
into
mean,
that, at that point, when I think a female, let's say, says to you that she has feelings, then
hmm,
I think that's where there's boundaries. And I think that's where it comes down to the man or woman, whoever it is that's in love with this lady,
hmm,
that they kind of say, well, okay, now things change because this is
right,
not respecting my relationship anymore. So I think that's where that's where the line is. Once you know it, what do you do with it?
right, yeah, no, I agree too. And I think for me personally, like, I know, even being a little bit younger too, like having somewhat been in those situations too, even myself on the other side of it, where if it was a friend and that you were attracted to, I mean, having that maturity to be like, you know what, this is a really attractive person and have a lot of great qualities, but sort of also just making that decision too, that being conscious of it again, right? And saying, yeah, you know what, but we are friends. She is involved with someone. I'm not going to ruin this friendship over that, or I'm not going to, because yeah, being aware that, like you said, Natasha, that things will change if you're going to bring that up, or if you have to be mature enough to handle that, to say like, you know what, I have to be able to put it aside and say, she is a really attractive friend that I have, and that's the key word, is she is a friend, and you've assessed the situation. There's not a sort of mutual thing going on, or she's dating other guys or whatever. You have to be mature enough to say, leave it at that. Are you mature enough to handle that and keep her as a friend? Or if you're not, then you got to move on.
And I think the key for men that I don't think that they do is, once they find that information out that the female does like them, they don't tell their partner. They, for some reason, feel like they should keep that in. And then somehow she finds out, that's where we get upset. It's like, well, when you knew, why didn't you just tell us? We wouldn't have been mad. But the fact that you hid it is where we get upset. So that's something that I notice with a lot of my friends and situations I've seen, that why do men feel the need not to tell us about that key conversation that you had with her?
I think John is going to say on this. I do personally. I'm just saying quickly because I kind of have what John's going to say, because obviously from the men's point of view. But
yeah,
I think we are thinking, John, if you or I were quick on this, you could just change the background of the Toronto, so this big explosion in the back, this nuclear bomb. Because ideally, and maybe it depends on who you're dealing with, but Natasha, maybe you are cool as a cucumber. You're like cool enough to say, you know what, I'm happy that you told me that.
Yeah.
But I think I find that, or maybe it's an unfounded fear. Who knows? But I think that there is that part that we'll just be like, okay, we'll deal with it. I'm not going to say anything, and it's done. Handle
until she finds out about it, and then
until she found out. And if you're not doing anything, you don't have anything to worry about. But also that part is like, if you say that, how do you mention it? Do you just, by the way, my friend, my friend Lisa that I hang out with, she told me the other day, funny story. She told me that she's attracted to me. So anyways, what do you want to watch tonight? Right? It would be like, excuse me?
Doesn't happen like that.
I told you, don't you dare hang out with that Lisa anymore.
That's it.
What women really want is, and I think it's a little bit harder for men from what I've noticed, is communicating to the point where you just tell us, we want to know what's going on. Just bring us into it. Let us know, look, I want you to know, Catherine told me she likes me. I'm on it. I've told her that nothing's going to happen, and I just want you to know. And, my relationship with her is going to change. And just something to loop you in. That's something that means something to me. But I know that there's other people that may not be able to.
No.
Right. I don't want to say that you're, and I don't want to say that normally, but I think, and maybe like I said, the thing is, maybe it's an unfounded fear, but that might be. I'm glad that you said that. That's maybe that's a good way to bring it forward, saying like, hey, I just wanted to let you know I'm handling it, and this is going to change.
Like, this is what's going to change.
Listen.
Sort of address her.
What the two of you
are saying that stuff, you address it, but you go ahead, John.
What the two of you are doing right now is writing a screenplay. I'm sorry, you're writing. So funny thing happened on the way to the market, honey.
Scenarios.
Deborah, I can't believe her. She told me, she says I'm hot. Can you believe her?
Cue the music, right?
Yeah.
Your partner, it's how you like loop her in.
You see, I don't listen.
Just my thoughts.
This is a great soap opera, like screenplay. Oh, are you serious? Yeah. Can you? No. Like, there's a reason why men don't like saying certain things to women, right? Because that thing will escalate. Will escalate to the point where you're like, oh man, if I only shut my big fat mouth.
Right.
And it's just pure regret.
And then it's like, have you seen my keys? And they'll be like, why don't you ask Lisa with it?
Because from that day, Lisa is on is on attention. Like she's like public enemy number one. Like, it's now like, well, you need to like block her. You need to delete her number. You need to like just stay away from her. If she's going to a party, you
Agree
go
with
to the
that.
other
Yeah.
party.
I think it depends on your relationship, number one. And if someone is self-confident and they're self-confident in their relationship, then it's about trust. So personally for me, it's if someone were to tell me that, I'd be like, okay, I'm glad I'm in the loop. I hope there's changes. But yeah, at the back of my mind, I'm going to be looking at Deborah and how her actions are with whoever I'm with. But personally, I think I would really want to be looped in than finding out somewhere down the road that Deborah always liked you and that you knew and you never told me. Then I think there's some, why didn't you have the decency to tell me that when you knew? Just my way. Other people are obviously different.
So this is Natasha today. Like, sure, you've been through things in your life.
You're not buying it, but
You're like, no, this is
Yeah,
not
you've gone
true.
through things in your life. And again, this is a complete screenplay, with no disrespect to Natasha. But imagine if that that other lady that you thought was more attractive than you, right? And then maybe you liked your guy like you're like beyond in love with him.
Okay,
Like he is not just the one, he is it.
he's it.
Every other man is dirt, you know?
Ash.
Like you're just like, if this doesn't work, suicide. Like you're done. Like, and please, people, suicide not recommended. Please don't think about that. My point is, um, in that relationship at that moment in time, and you're probably very right. This is how you'd react to it. Um, but I'm trying to picture and imagine me in that kind of relationship. And she says, "Oh, yeah, Bobby is like into me, and it's happened to me,
right.
and it's happened to me." And I didn't think the guy was more attractive than me, but he had a lot more clout. He was more popular. He was more of everything. He was way more confident than I was because he was hitting on my girl hardcore. I went to his house because this guy had like a lot of parties, and I heard the two of them in his room. I'm like, I'm banging on the door, calling out her name,
Wow.
and
That was the
they,
second one, or not the same one that you talked.
actually, this is a third lady. Actually,
What?
sorry.
Third, this is a.
Uh,
I don't want to get.
Give a little more of why he feels this way.
Mhm.
well,
I don't.
anyways,
I don't want to get psychological, but there seems to be some.
Yeah, there's a pattern here that we're
there's a
seeing.
pattern here. There's a pattern. Anyways, as we're talking, I'm like more is coming out. But I went to his door banging on there, and I could hear the two of them like laughing. I know my girls laugh. So they never came out, and I left the house. And I was like, I thought maybe that wasn't them. But I learned later on it was. But he was her ex, right? But he was kind of like in the picture, but not exactly.
Right.
Um, to this day, I mean, they're both out of my life. But it's uncomfortable when you're going through it. It's kind of like, well, what does he have that I don't have? Like, and in a woman's mind, she's like, what is like, what's the, how did this even happen? But whoever you're with, even if you don't think that person is attractive, someone out there is like, my goodness, look at that, right? One man's trash, another man's treasure. Um, and sometimes someone might appreciate, your guy, your girl better than you, right? And says, there's just some qualities. And the person and that guy that you're with, sometimes is like, man, like I don't like when she yells at me. I don't like when she does this. And that other female friend is like, oh, might notice that and says, Bobby, you could do much better than that. You're an awesome guy. And starts to lift him up. And he's like, man, I feel like a man. And then so whenever he's around her, she's like, hey, if you ever want to switch sides, you could play for this team. So there's the one side where someone comes and says, hey, I find you very attractive and I think we should, think about being together. And they might have some insider information, And I knew a girl like that in Winnipeg. She moved and she was with a guy who was just horrible, and I was very interested. But this guy was deeply in her mind, like, this is my guy.
Right.
And, you know, when someone likes you, there's not much you can do about that piece. But I think the responsible thing is, if you're with somebody that you really find attractive or you really want to be with, I think it's up to you. There is a responsibility or an obligation on your part to say, look, if things were different, we could talk more about you and I. But right now, out of loyalty, I just can't go there with you.
Exactly.
I think
Well,
that
just
should be
to
it.
add to your story, I mean, everybody I've ever been with was never comfortable with any guy. It was always an issue. So they never were okay with me hanging out with them or having alone time with them. And more was, we're in a relationship, so this has to change. So I do know, maybe from a man's perspective, and a lot of men feel the same way that you do as well. And again, with the voting, like, I don't see all the people that vote, but again, majority of the people all agree that they aren't comfortable with their partner doing that. So they probably have the same sort of viewpoints as you as well.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting take. And again, another thought that popped in my head too was, as John was talking, I think this was probably even another one of your poll things too, your polls questions as well, where it was, because I think one differentiating factor might be, um, somewhat of a major one. I think it could be if that friend is an ex, or
Right.
is
That
that
come
possible?
up.
Because I think the question, you had a question where it's like,
Yeah.
could you be friends with your ex? Um, I mean, I think that's possible, but again, it has to be, I don't know, that's a little bit more difficult and a
Right.
little bit less able for your partner to accept that too. I mean, on both sides, but that takes an extra level of maturity, I think.
Yeah. And in the polls, just to give everybody a scope of what people said, it was like a landslide that they were not comfortable with that. Men and women both agreed. And I think that one is like, for me, I don't think I'd be that comfortable with that, because there was, attraction for sure. And there was a relationship, emotional and physical. So that one, I don't know if I'd be that comfortable with. And I feel like once something ends, there's a reason why it ends, and it doesn't need to kind of be kept going. So
Right.
I agree with the polls that I don't think that that's the best situation.
Right. Yeah, I think kind of
That's
maybe at
fire.
yeah, you agree with that too, John?
Oh, yeah, that's complete fire because
Yeah,
you've tasted that person in so many ways.
exactly.
And if you ever have an emotional low point in your life,
Right.
you can always go
Go
there,
back
like,
to that. And there's a
yeah,
comfort there that
comfort.
exactly that was,
Right. I think yeah, it has if it's friends, then it has to be very arm's length. Like you just say,
platonic, brother, sister feel, sister,
yeah,
sister, you know what I mean? Yeah,
like if you're on good terms with them, well, maybe if you see them out somewhere, if you're then in your same city, you can say hi to them.
exactly.
They might, if you want to say like, hey, happy birthday, because you've known them for so long, happy birthday, great, that's it. Like it's not a big blah blah blah. But other than that, John's saying maybe too much. No, you're adding too much, John. I
He
see.
thinks it's another screenplay again. That's why.
Um,
But just
if it,
pleasantry, basically, just basically being like civil. You can be civil with your ex, but you're not getting like into a
Uh,
whole like conversations,
right.
like hanging out, all that kind of stuff.
it's kind of like if you meet your ex and you're both single and it's New Year's Eve, right? And there's that cultural New Year's Eve kiss. You both see each other and you're like, hey, I remember you. I remember you. I think there's just times where if you see your ex, that whole friendship piece,
Mm.
like there are some people where you'll forget momentarily why you broke up. And then, your mind starts to go back to, oh, right, we can't even go there because you were so horrible in this area that I couldn't even
Right.
have you in my phone. So for some, it can work, but I don't recommend, being friends with your ex.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
And that's no screenplay.
I mean, another reason why what that we talked about having you on the show was about, and even with John too. I mean, both of you are um, former Winnipeggers. Well, you're always going to be from Winnipeggers
Winnipeg is
at heart.
always home.
At heart, the YWG 204.
Yeah.
Going to be from there. But I mean, the move to Toronto, um, the just the both with both of you. I'll give the floor to you first, Natasha. Just as far as like Toronto versus Winnipeg, the differences, the bit of the struggle. I mean, you kind of have a little bit of your story when you got there, and how you feel it is now. Um, Maybe you could elaborate on that.
Yeah. So again, Winnipeg is always going to be home. And, you can be in Toronto or anywhere in the world, but you still have this little piece of Winnipeg in you wherever you go, which makes us, I think, humble, friendly, and kind and down to earth. And that's something that I never want anybody or any of us to lose. Um, so Winnipeg obviously is, a great little town, like city, that has a lot of great friendships and family, and it's just really close knit, and you can have a really amazing life there, with the cost of living and whatnot. And I know a lot of people ask, why did you move? And I think there was just this little voice in me that said, there's just something more. You gotta just, there's something that's just not enough here for you. And so that's why I, took the dive and moving to Toronto. And just give everyone like a backstory, I was a teacher at Maples Collegiate and absolutely loved it. Loved the kids, loved, living there with my family. Um, but I decided to take a year leave absence and come to Toronto and try to see if I can make it out here. And it was a struggle. It was really hard. And a lot of people don't realize that you need to really prepare yourself to come out here. You can't just wing it and think it's going to work. It's an expensive city, it's a hustle. You're competing with thousands of people for jobs. So by coming and just moving out here and thinking it's going to work, it's not. You're most likely going to have to move back. One thing I did and want to give everyone just tips is that I fully prepared myself with savings of a year so that if I couldn't find a job or it was a little more difficult, I had that in my back pocket because I knew how expensive it is here.
Right.
And then second, I never had a plan B. So when I moved out here, I said to myself, I'm going to make it work. There's no plan B. I'm not going to go back. I just have to find every single way to make Toronto it. And just to add to my story, because I don't want to take too long, is the first year I worked 3 jobs. I literally slept maybe 3 hours just
Wow.
to make my rent. And it was just hustling. Like transit took an hour and a half each way. I was trying to save. I couldn't afford to do the nightlife here. I could just really afford to just make ends meet. And and then the story changed when I got this job opportunity with Shiseido Canada and work with education and run it, and boom, your life kind of flips. But you have to go through that sacrifice and that hustle and that no sleep to get to that next place.
Hmm.
And just the last little thing, I had one of the best advice from this guy that I was on the transit. It was cold. It was minus 40. And I didn't hear back from Shiseido if I was getting the job. And that meant that I was going to have to move back to Winnipeg the next week. And this old man had said to me, he's like, you're going to make it, but you have to think of yourself with a horse and those blinders on the side. In Toronto, you have to just see what you want and not get distracted, and it's going to work out for you. And he's like, the minute that you start to see there's a plan B or this isn't going to work, it's not. And that was the best advice I had. And I was like, nope, I'm determined to figure this out. And when I got the job offer, because I had reached out again and again, I think I reached out to them 15 times. They
Wow.
were like, your drive, we want you here. Let's do this. And then my life changed. And now here I am. So that's just a little back end of Toronto.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. I mean, that's a great. I want to say story, but obviously it's real.
For my real life, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's like coming up from the struggle. I mean, that's sort of something that you hear a lot with
Oh,
people
yeah.
who are successful, right? I mean, you're a successful um, woman out in Toronto now. I mean, doing your thing, doing a job that you love, a career that you love, and yeah, like you said, maybe a lot of things that maybe it's just a lesson there for a lot of people, even in general, like sort of like you said, getting through that struggle.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that you probably will agree that, I mean, going through the struggle makes you appreciate what you have more,
Oh my
right?
goodness. Because that struggle teaches you a place you never want to go back to.
Mm.
So when you get your job and you get, the money and you get the lifestyle, you're like, this can be taken away like that. I can go back to that time where I wasn't sleeping and I'm never going to allow that to happen again. So I'm going to work so hard and appreciate every day that I have this job. So that hustle, I feel like, and that struggle is something that everybody kind of needs to go through because it lives within you. You know how hard it was. And again, like one of the best things I've ever seen with a lot of my friends that struggled is just that humbleness of when you actually make it.
Hmm.
And, being confident about it, but also knowing that in a second that can be taken away from you.
Right. Right. No, that's great. And again, for before we can continue, congratulations on your success out there.
Yeah,
Thank you.
congratulations indeed. I'm still struggling with the 3 hours of sleep in one
Oh,
year.
it was a year. It was like,
No, 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 no. Hang on.
no,
Because are you saying 3 hours of sleep in one year?
For the whole year.
oh no, no. Oh my God, I wouldn't be around.
Go.
It's like, Natasha?
You're like, are you
Hello?
there? Yeah.
I wonder what would happen though, like 3 hours of sleep in 1 month. Like
Oh
what?
God, you wouldn't,
Yeah,
you'd get sick. You would literally get sick.
absolutely.
Yeah, your
There's
body
going to be
wouldn't do
some
much.
sort of stat or some study on that. Somebody's tried
Someone's tried it.
Guinness World
Yeah.
Book Record for like going without sleep, and I'm sure that.
Oh man.
But John, what's your on that same note? What's your story, man? I know a
Yeah.
bit about
Yeah.
it. Can you tell
You
us?
know, um, I came here in 2009. I was dating someone in Toronto, and I left my previous job, and it was perfect, right? So went down, spent some time, and then when I came to Toronto, I was like, man, I've always wanted to be here.
Me too.
This place is incredible.
Incredible.
Look, 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 look. And I came here for a few months to be with her, and
Your
then I
daughter's
went back.
excited about it too.
Erica is excited about it too. She's like, "Thank you." So I came here for a few months to check it out. I was like, "Man, oh my goodness!" And look, and then there's a place called King Street,
Yes.
and I was just like,
It's
and
a
then I
different vibe. It's a
very
vibe.
different vibe,
The
and
energy.
I think Toronto was just. I have to explain this part. Toronto is just a massive contrast to Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Different scales
Yeah.
of everything, everything.
Yeah.
So the friendliness, not there.
Nope.
But on King Street, I rolled with these guys who they were driving a Hummer. Remember the Hummers?
Yeah.
And we
You say,
pulled in.
you say you rolled with these guys?
Yeah, like we were like the
Rolling in.
wheels,
Were you part of a gang, or what's going on out there,
the
man?
Hummer gang. So we got to King Street, and that's when I saw something I wasn't prepared to see. We got to this club, and these guys were like, you know, I wouldn't say ballers, but they knew how to talk to girls. But I saw something I've never seen before. So we get to King Street, we park. I think we've been in the club for a little bit. Now we're outside, and this is the horror. There's like five of us, and I think three of them are like trying to talk to girls. And one guy tries to talk to a girl, and she's not stopping. She's walking as she, and, so hey, listen, what's your name? And she's like, "Rrr, rrr, rrr, rrr." So listen, you want to get something to eat? And she's moving. I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, why are you so rude? And it took the guy like half a block to get her to physically stop.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Nope. Nope. I gotta go. Mm-hmm. I was like, what the heck? Next guy, same thing. Next guy, same thing.
Mhm.
And then I went to my favorite mall. It's called Yorkdale Mall.
Mine too.
Yeah. Um, Natasha, Sean,
Mm.
same thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I was dating someone at the time. So I was like, okay, I'm okay now. I don't have to worry about that. But I went to this hat store and some guy's trying to talk to a girl and the same thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, boss, like, what is that? And he's like, nah, they have to do that because they get hit on by too many guys. It's just so they have to weed you out. And he's like, it's a defense mechanism. I was like, oh, I'm really screwed because if I wasn't like picking up girls in Winnipeg, what am I going to do over here? So I went, I was just like, this is maddening. And I think the girl I was even dating, I could see that in her. Like she had that defensiveness. We met online, so that's how we got together. Um, but anyways, moved to Toronto 2009 officially, got a job, um, and for the first 5 years, me and other Winnipeggers would all talk, and they were like, "Yeah, man, the first 5 years was the hardest thing for them."
For sure.
I'm not sure why five, but like in year 6 and 7, I was like, "Oh,
It gets easier. Yeah.
yeah." I was like, "Yeah." So I used to call friends from back in Winnipeg. I'm like, "I'm coming back." Like in year 1, 2, and 3, I'm like, "I
Yeah.
can't handle it. I can't. They're awful. They're rude. They're rude." Um, but I'm glad I stayed. And something happened in year 1. I got a job downtown, and I was just fascinated by Toronto downtown.
Oh, I love it.
And I was living in Oshawa, so that's like an hour and something train
Wow.
ride each way. So when I came to Toronto downtown, the Winnipeg in me saying hi to everybody.
Oh yeah, that's not gonna
Oh
die.
man!
They'll look at you like, why are you smiling at me?
Really? Yeah.
In probably the 12 years of living here, maybe 5 people, 7 have like initiated a conversation like a Winnipegger. Oh, the weather's pretty cold today, huh? Like that. Anyways, so I'm walking north on Yonge to go to work, and I see black females, African women. I see other men, and all I'm doing is, good morning, good morning, good morning, and they're not answering back,
Wow.
and they're answering with like, and and I physically can't even stop myself from saying hello.
Hmm.
I physically can't even like, okay, stop. I can't do that. So it went on for years. Now it still happens today.
Wow.
It still happens today, but it's like I'll say hi like 2 out of 10 people. Before it was like 12 out of 10 people I was saying hi to. Ironically, my little daughter does exact same thing.
Oh.
Right? It's the gene, man. It's the Winnipeg gene, I think.
It just stays with you.
But like Natasha said, it's expensive here. But one thing I can tell you is career-wise, I grew
Oh.
like 3 to 5 times more than I would if I was in Winnipeg. The interview process. So this is for anyone in Winnipeg or anywhere else that wants to move to Toronto or a large city like Toronto. Um, the interview process, you got asked harder questions,
Oh,
like
and it's
harder.
interviews over interviews over interviews.
Now, I've been through so many interviews in Winnipeg, I became very good at them. I knew the certain jargons to use, bigger words to use, the cadence. So I was getting offers in Toronto, or I should say Ontario, because the girl I was dating at the time was living at Niagara on the Lake.
Oh.
Now, here's what happened though, and this is a massive tip to everybody that's wants to move out. Get your references checked and rechecked because I had a mole. I had somebody that was a bad reference.
Wow.
So I had 3 references, and I think I had like 4 job offers. 4. And the first 3 didn't call me back because I thought I didn't get it. But the fourth one was like, Mr. Baffy, yeah, I think you should, replace one of your references because we really like you. And they went and they're like, what happened with this one guy? So I
Wow.
had to write a letter and replace that one guy who was my old boss with 2 other references. So I had to get a VP and a project manager to replace that one boss. And then they were like, come on in. So please, um, spire on your references. Like have someone call your reference and say, hey, um, we want to see how, you know, Dave was at last place. And if you hear like, oh man, this guy was trash, we're
Hmm.
so happy he's gone. So apparently, my friend who's in HR, she said, you know what, you should not be giving people bad references. Number one, all they can say is like he worked here. Um, um, I don't know. It's very very basic things, right? But they're so basic that it tells you it wasn't a good relationship or a good reference anyhow. But this guy trashed me,
Wow.
That's
right?
crazy.
And the thing is, my money wasn't right. So I'm just getting tighter and tighter. And the car I had, I was putting in $20 of gas and letting it drive for $20 and then putting $20 again. Because I'm like, man, I just can't do anything.
Yeah.
But coming out here, first 5 years, really rough. Beyond that, um, the people, the opportunities, things I saw, the people I met, um, tremendous. And I can only say that because I went back to Winnipeg for 1 year to work there for a finance company. And I got back to Winnipeg, and people were like, "Oh, you're from Toronto." I'm like, "Well, I'm from Winnipeg, and I went, yeah, I'm from Toronto."
Yeah, yeah.
And the people at the job, it's a huge company in Winnipeg, by the way. They were like, "Just letting you know, Mr. Toronto, we are about 3 to 5 years behind Toronto." I was like, "No, this isn't a company in like a country outside of Canada or North America. Like this is a company in Canada." And they were happy, like they're proud to say, yeah, we're about 3 to 5 years behind. So they're 3 to 5 years behind in terms of technology, systems, and processes. And also budgets are much lower in Winnipeg. So innovation on some of these companies, they're like, no, we don't do that until Toronto tries it. That's what they said. We wait till Toronto tries it for 3 to 5 years, and then we consider it. So I went back to Winnipeg for that
Just,
time.
just to interject, I mean, again, maybe tell people what you do as well as far as your type of work.
So I professionally wash cars. Okay, I wash cars all day and
It's,
all night.
it's, the sponges in Toronto are a little bit more advanced.
Right. I used to use my left hand. I use my right hand. So I do consulting for organizations in cybersecurity and information security. So
Awesome.
basically, helping companies not to get breached, like data breach. I don't want to hear your name. I don't want to hear a current or former client in the paper. And when these breaches happen, it's millions of dollars and other damages that they can't recover from. They just can't. So I was consulting this one company in Winnipeg, and they're very wealthy. Like they are a national wide, like big company. Um, so when I came back to Toronto, I saw obviously a huge difference. Um, but if you ever decide to want to move from Winnipeg to Toronto, there's a lot of things I think you need to really take into consideration. But number one, come to Toronto for a few months, check it out, because you need that mental bridge to say, this is what I'm getting into. But if you just move here on a whim,
Yeah, it
you're
doesn't work.
moving back in the wind. Like it's not recommended.
And
Mm.
just to add to what you were saying, Toronto has a different energy. It's like everybody hustles here, they work hard, but they also live hard. So it brings this different kind of pull out of you to, elevate in your career, make money, do all these things. I mean, there's a double-edged sword that it's a very materialistic place. And, the first question that I always get asked here is, where do you work? Where do you live? And what do you drive? And I'm always like, whoa, I didn't even think people cared about where we live. Like in Winnipeg, no one ever asked where I live. That wasn't a question. Here, that's the first question I was always asked, and I was taken back. But yeah, the big thing that I love about it is that it brings out this drive in you to go after something and be the best you can be. And there's so many opportunities that you would never have that like chance to do. Like I go in and out of New York with my work. And I remember when I was standing in New York, I'm like, how did I get here? But Toronto was sort of that vantage point to, see so much different.
Yeah. Um, Hang on. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, you're absolutely right because I saw things here. Working on like multi-million-dollar projects
Yeah.
in Winnipeg. I only heard about it. Like it was in
Yeah.
that like
You're actually
those
getting
people
it.
over there.
Mhm.
Being exposed to like leadership positions was like
Next to none in Winnipeg.
right.
Yeah.
So I look at a guy like Sean, um, and this is my little plug for Sean. But Sean's very creative.
Yeah.
Even with what you're doing with R&R in Toronto, it'd be like R&R squared or to the third power
Yeah.
because here your platform just boom,
Yeah.
right? You're going from you're not going from Toronto to here. You're starting from like you might have like people in Oakville, right, which is close to me, to like Oshawa, and especially now with the internet, you're attracting all these people. So if in Winnipeg you're having like 200 people at your event, you might have like 6 to 1,000 or more. Right now, you got to think of logistics on another level. You might have to hire Natasha for your marketing. You know, and don't hire me to be a bouncer. I hate that. Don't hire me for you're a big guy, Kwame Chan. Anyways, but being in Toronto, you see. Sorry, I should say this. My learning,
Mm.
the stuff I've seen and learned and come across, it's just given me a lot of confidence, a
Mm.
lot of confidence. So I can now talk to executives in the C-suite, to a director, to and different retail to finance companies.
Mm.
In Winnipeg, I was just doing IT,
Yeah.
and I really felt like, well, this is what I can do. This is really it. Um, but you know, the big gorilla in the room is like cost of living.
Cost of living. I know
Man.
it's a beast. That's why, like, when you get a decent income, it's
Yeah.
like you can survive, but you got to make a little bit more to have a life here, if that makes sense. And it's sad, but it's true. And
Mm.
I'll add to your story. Like I know you're mentioning how women were really rude to guys that were hitting. So on a perspective of a woman's side in Toronto, yeah, there is a lot of attention. There you get it from walking on the street, on the subway, eating at a restaurant all the time. But and I've seen it with friends here in Toronto, like, a lot of them do treat men disrespectfully. And but I guess coming from Winnipeg, I think, one, that person took a lot of courage to come up and say something to me. And two, why is it that if I walk away, what is that gonna do? Why can't I just politely tell him thank you, but this isn't gonna work? So for me, I've always had that Winnipeg part of me that still gives every person that's come up to me a little bit of respect. Because again, I mean, that confidence to go up to someone and tell them they like you is hard. So I don't say, not every girl's like this, but I know what you mean, that a good 70 to 80% of women here will just not even make eye. And I remember just seeing it with my friends here, and I'm like, oh, wow, because that kind of hurts to see that. So the little Winnipeg in us keeps us still
and
going.
and uh,
I
and this
think
is, hang on. So sorry, hang on, Sean. And this is two things here. Um, Me and my friends noticed girls that were not from Toronto.
Yeah, I get that. They'll be like, you're not from here. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah, like they'll talk to you. even if you're not gonna get the number, they'll still talk to you,
Yes. Yes.
and you'll get the name at least.
Yeah.
And I think back then there was no IG, but you know, there is like the girls from the smaller communities, or even like outside of
Yeah.
Toronto,
Yeah.
like. And one guy's like, yeah, sometimes you got to go into like the Mississaugas and the Bramptons. Like those girls, they're living in a more like less stressed environment, and they'll be like, okay, your name is Joe. I'm Sarah. Okay, yeah, this is my number. Yeah, okay, like we can talk. Um, but I think it's just the big city mentality.
Yeah.
Mm.
And
Now,
I agree. And I think also when I was kind of a little quick little story is when I moved out here, I met a couple girls, and the first thing they said is like, "Oh, if you want to meet a rich guy, hang out here, or make sure
Like,
you find out what he drives before you go on a date." And I remember being like, "Really?" I was shocked, but that's normal here. I'm gonna be real, like it's it's normal for women to look for money and cars and where he lives. And on the other side, there's men that like a specific look and maybe doesn't care what she makes or what she does, but is she looking a specific way? So it is real downtown Toronto. I've seen it.
it's real.
It's
Like I
real.
think I got warned first when I got here about the
Me
gold
too.
diggers. Like that was their name.
No,
They're
there's
like,
a lot.
yeah, they're like, Kwam, watch out. And to me, I was like, what I
Yeah.
drive and what I do.
Yes.
Actually, no, it wasn't what I drive. It was like, what do you do for work?
Yes, that's and where do you live?
I was like,
Yeah.
so actually, I remember actually going out with a lawyer, a lawyer lady. And so I was just like, oh man, a lawyer. Whew. And this girl lived like downtown core in one of those condos, right? And it wasn't going to be it wasn't a cheap condo, right? So we went out, and she's like, so where do you live? I was like, I live like in Scarborough. Okay. And I had a roommate.
oh,
Um,
this is not sounding exciting. From what you both told me, this is not looking good.
but I mean, she was different. She was different. I must admit, she wasn't like, oh, roommate. No. So it wasn't like Scarborough. You don't own. I'm out of here. But she
Yeah,
was like, you got a roommate? Okay, I can't handle that because I don't want to come over and he's like, I was like, okay, I get it.
right.
But there is socially and culturally, there's a lot to get used to here.
Yes,
A lot.
a lot.
Mm.
Um, I'm a big dude, and somebody would literally bump me. So think of it this way: I'm talking to Natasha. We're downtown somewhere. We're having a bite. We're eating, and some guy like hits my shoulder, like this part right here, not here, but this part right here with his shoulder, like boom. So I end up turning a bit, and the guy keeps walking.
Mhm.
You're
So I
talking,
get
yeah, you're
we're
talking about
talking.
you're walking down the street or you're just sitting there.
No, let's say Natasha and I are just standing somewhere. I'm
Right.
standing, but I'm saying this way, and the guy's coming this way,
Mm.
and he hits my shoulder square, right? Accidental or not, or sorry, intentional or not, the guy does not skip a beat. And I
Mm.
turn
And
around.
here's another little add to that. Even if you're with a guy, a man will still come up and hit on you, like he
Yeah.
wants to. Like there's a lot of
Oh, you know what? I saw that in Minneapolis a
oh
lot.
my God, here
Minneapolis,
they don't care.
Minneapolis.
They'll come up with your man there and be like,
Actually,
hey,
That's where that's getting back to where you have to have. I mean, years back, I had that happen to me, and luckily, I guess John can attest. I don't want to blow my own horn, but someone was like, "Man, are you gonna do anything about that?" I'm like, "Hey, you know what? If she wants to, if she's gonna engage him, she knows that I'm here.
yeah,
I have confidence enough that if I'm going to get a drink and I turn around and some guy's talking to whoever I'm with, that you know what, that I can come back and be like, hey, how's it going? And even introduce myself to him and be like, okay, hey, we're gonna go
I've done that.
whatever,
I've
right?
done that. And the guy was just like, aren't you gonna hit me? I'm like, nah, man. Um, but this guy bumped me and he just kept on walking. So I turned around like angry, like first of all, how dare you? Second, say something.
Mm.
But it happened more than once.
Wow.
And it happened again on the train. And then I was just like, I am not in Kansas anymore. That's when it really hit me, was the cultural differences in how we treat each other.
There's a
Literally.
lot of a big part about status here. So, it's materialistic, let's be real.
But I think, let's think of it this way too. Um, Toronto is to Winnipeg what New York is to
Yeah.
Toronto.
Yeah.
So
for
if
sure.
we're struggling here, and
Yeah,
you go to
yeah,
New
yeah.
York, and I actually went to New York once. Sadly, I was alone. I didn't have anybody with me, but I went there for work, and theirs is like 10 squared. So I went to this area, and you've got like an intersection, right? But this one was like just absolutely massive. So people were not obeying the traffic laws. So you had cars turning left, right, to cross the street, and cars crossing the street, and cars going this way, and it was just a complete zoo of taxis, like yellow taxis. Never seen this in my life. And there was just gridlock, and it was nighttime. And I went to a club, and I was like, okay, I got in finally, and I ordered a drink.
Mm.
How much was that drink?
$25.
Okay, no, sorry, Natasha. I didn't go to that club, okay? It was $15.
Well,
But
it's probably
here's what
$5 now.
but here's what happened though, is that when I heard that amount, I was trying to stay calm. I was trying to stay calm and not be like, are you serious?
Yeah.
So I paid the 20, got a 5, gave a tip, and I was in complete shock. But that was New York. In Toronto, again, like wild numbers. Like we went to our club, and a beer was like $9,
Oh my God, yeah.
and we were like, and it's too late, right? Anyways, um, but I mean, living here, um, I just said, for me and my family, we're gonna live out in Hamilton. It's a lot cheaper. It's slower. It's quieter. It's all these awesome things. A little Winnipeggy, I would say.
Hmm.
But one thing I want to mention about Winnipeg is there is a misunderstanding that I'd like the three of us to hear, but also for everybody else.
Mm.
I have now come to the conclusion that Winnipeg is a massive city, and I'll explain. I went to school in Winnipeg for um, a little bit of my kindergarten, and I moved back to Ghana as a kid. But I came back and did my junior high and high school and college in Winnipeg. So let's just say about 30 years in Winnipeg. I have only seen maybe 7 people from those schools that I knew as a kid. 7 people, 10 if I'm being nice and generous.
Mm.
We say it's a small city, but there are people I've never seen again. Never seen again. Either they moved away or they have a different scene that they hang out in, right? A small city is somewhere that you're going to see the same people over and over and over, which you do in Winnipeg.
Right.
But why is it the people I went to school with? I've never, there's people I was fond of. Like this one guy, if you're listening, here's his name, Chris Stagels. This guy was like the coolest kid in elementary. Never saw that kid ever again. And it just shocks me. Like, where did they go?
Yeah.
Right?
Possibly could have moved or whatever, but yeah, I hear what you're
It's very possible. But Natasha, think of the kids you taught at Maples, or the friends you had in school. Like how many of them, And I'm not talking about the ones that you're like where your friends, you had their numbers. I'm talking about like you knew them, they knew you, like you could recognize them in the crowd, but you never saw them again.
But I think here's also the difference. Like, I didn't go out as much as I got older in Winnipeg. I more just staying at home and had house parties with people that I was close with. Maybe they were going out, or I find that in Winnipeg we kind of stay home a little bit more than here in Toronto where you're out all the time. So that could be also an additional reason of why we're not seeing people our age-ish, maybe.
Hmm.
But again, like when I don't mean to say Winnipeg's small. I mean, definitely I get it that it's a city. It's just I think what it needs is just more events, kind of like what you do, like your rooftop events. And,
Yeah.
you know, we have brunch parties here on Sundays, which runs from noon until 5. You have a great time with your friends. You go home and you sleep and you go to work the next day. Like there needs to be more things to do for I think older people.
Yeah.
But it's
And
still
they're the
a
ones with
great
the money. And they're the ones with the money,
yeah,
right?
like it's a great city in the sense to gain, like I said, for a family and, to have that, great closeness with people that you grew up with. But I just think there needs to be more things for people to do.
And I
Right.
think I think
Working on it.
events and I think events
Yeah.
for older people, the advantage is also the networking. Like you get to
Yeah.
know somebody in marketing, advertising, and there's a good vibe, and you're like, "Hey, I'm looking for work," and they're like, "Oh, talk to my buddy Joe over here,"
Yeah.
and there's that trust connection, and it climbs. Um, but in Toronto, um, there's a lot of that. But I will say one thing about Winnipeg is I came to Winnipeg looking for work, and I used LinkedIn, and people were so warm and friendly to connect me to the right person.
Yeah.
In Toronto,
You're on your own.
they were I'll get some responses, but I found Winnipeg, they were still like, oh, okay, you used to live in Winnipeg. I maybe that part, but they were very open to like help and get me back into the Winnipeg economy. So
But the difference is Toronto's also competitive because you
very,
have everybody's out for themselves. You're basically like, if they can't help you with that job, I'm going to be applying to for it. So that's the different hustle, right?
right. Um,
Yeah, I think.
yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Sean.
yeah. No, I hear you guys. Yeah, on that. I mean, I've obviously haven't lived in Toronto. Visited, handful of times. Toronto, great city. I think a lot of stuff to do there. Yeah, I think the difference. Winnipeg is, as far as I can tell, is like the pace, right? I mean, it's a
Yeah.
growing city. It is growing.
Yes.
I think more recently in the past few years, it seems to be growing more. And I'm not sure what's spurring that growth. It could be the lower cost of living and so on, but like there's a lot of stuff, condos, developments going up here like crazy now. I don't know where people are coming from, but I think we're at like, I think the population's close, if not close to 800,000 now or something like that. Um, but yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, that's not the sort of, well, yeah, to kind of plug maybe a little bit what I do. Again, one of the things that I do
Yeah,
is,
you're giving a little taste of different things, which is really great. Because every
yeah,
time when I lived there and I used to go to your events, I mean, I had a great time. And, when I come to Toronto, there's little parts of Toronto that, you were doing some of that stuff that they're doing here. So
mm,
I think you should keep doing that. That's great for the city.
yeah, trying to do something different. Even if, even the thing is even trying to find even a somewhat different niche where it's
Yeah.
not doing the exact same events. There were some things a little unique here because I know we actually did we had a series, and hopefully we'll be able to continue that series after all this COVID stuff. But we had a series called Rhythm and Brunch that we did on Corridon, at this place on Corridon. And yeah, we had like, we started off with, my brother who's a chef was part of it. And my friend Emerson and I, um, organized it and DJ there, music, different courses that come out, and that was really fun. And we added an element of live music to it just to step it up a little bit
That's
more. And
awesome.
yeah, we even had a couple people, like a couple guys that came out from Toronto, and maybe they don't get out a lot or not, but they were like, yeah, you guys, whatever you guys doing here, it's great. Like
Yeah.
we don't, this is a little different to how we do it in Toronto, but this is like, it's cool, and you gotta keep doing this kind of stuff and whatever. And I think Winnipeggers are just slower, like great people in Winnipeg. I think Winnipeggers, the pace is just a little slower to adopt. And the thing with Winnipeg is it's very, it's interesting because Winnipeggers are somewhat fickle a little bit, where like I find as far as the entertainment kind of part, doing events and things like that, or even going out, and older people and maybe even younger people too. But I find that it's it's a little bit strange in a way, because there can be things. I think Winnipeg's a good maybe test market for things. I know like restaurants and stuff sometimes come here, and sometimes it can be like, it could be the most successful restaurant in a big city, and sometimes they come to Winnipeg and they don't make it for whatever reason. Or it's like, even though people have,
Yeah.
you think we don't have access to as much things here, but for whatever reason, sometimes there's like similar concept, somebody brings it here, and Winnipeg, they'll like it for a month, and then they'll be like, they're sort of on to the next thing.
I think for me, like one part that I love about Toronto and that was harder in Winnipeg was there was only a few niche places that you could go out. And when you went there, you saw everybody all the
Right.
time. So you walked in and you're like, oh, okay, there's Joe and there's
Yeah.
Jill. But like in Toronto, I could go out and I never see someone twice unless I plan it. So
Right.
you're always seeing new people. You're never having to go somewhere and bump into somebody unless you plan it.
Right.
Which adds to that aggressive part when a guy is hitting on you, because he knows if I don't try now and get her number, I'm not going to see her again.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
And it's
that's
true.
like that. No, but that's really what it is. So I found it hard because at the end, before I moved out here, I just stopped going out because I was like, I just don't want to bump into everybody all the time. I kind of want something just fresh and new.
I must say, like Winnipeg, you know, the women in Winnipeg, like as guys, we talk about this, like who has prettier women, Winnipeg or Toronto, and um, I would probably say, like Winnipeg has a lot.
Per capita, I definitely
Yeah. Oh yeah,
yeah,
Oops. Sorry.
per capita for sure.
yeah.
But um, Toronto has a variety. Like you're getting like the mixes, like the Asian and Latino girl. You're like,
Yeah.
right?
Or like,
So
for example, a Caribbean event. I remember going to this massive like Caribbean event, and I was like, "Whoa!" And they had food trucks, and they had all the different foods that you could get in Winnipeg, and it was just like you were in Trinidad, but in Toronto, and it was a cool vibe because you're seeing thousands, and it's just you're like, "Okay, this is cool." So you didn't really get that in Winnipeg as much, but here it's like
Yeah.
no,
culture.
but I mean, yeah, culture definitely. Winnipeg. I think per capita, it's a very amazing, especially with Folklorama.
Yeah, I love.
You just don't get that, and I mean, you get um, like housing.
Oh,
The cost of housing. I bought a house in Winnipeg in 2006 for 160,000.
what?
How much was like a 3 bedroom
I mean,
with a basement?
right now it's different, but I mean,
Well,
right now it's
this,
more like
yeah,
average prices. I think around like, depending for your house that you had, if I remember that house right now might be about maybe
Oh
400,000 or
my
something,
God, that's amazing. Still,
right? And yeah, you don't hear as much when I hear this of Toronto prices and Vancouver prices.
it's
I
over
mean,
a million.
yeah,
right,
Over a million for a small place.
and I mean like it's all economics. It's all economics, right? So I think the problem we often do is compare like Winnipeg and Vancouver or Winnipeg and Toronto.
mm,
It's like comparing a
Right?
6-year-old to a
Yeah.
college basketball player. Like they're not in the same realm,
Yeah.
right? So you got to compare like Toronto and Chicago. You
Yeah.
know, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when I look at Winnipeg, you can come down there, buy a condo for like maybe
200.
100, even 100,000. Like they
Yeah.
exist, right? I saw in the Exchange District, there are condos for just over 100, and I'm like scratching my eyes, like this exists? Because in Toronto, we're used to like two, three, four, 500, right? There is multi-million ones, but we're not going to talk about that. So I think comparing Toronto to Winnipeg is usually a bad idea because they're just, I mean, think of it this way: you're in Toronto, you're in Winnipeg right now, making 30,000. I'll put it this way: I was in Winnipeg making 42,000, went to Toronto making 56,000. Virtually the same job. Virtually the same job.
Right.
So they tell you 56,000, and I'm like, smoke goes boo, right?
When you first come.
Yeah. So what I noticed though is that a number of years into the job, I had what I call a tax meltdown because I saw how much taxes was coming off of my paychecks, and I was like, this is not right. So I actually quit. Like I actually stopped that job and I went into consulting.
Yeah.
So consulting now, I'm actually consulting as a business,
Right.
where you can control your taxes better. Yeah, but Winnipeg and Toronto, I'm more than happy, to have that Winnipeg base
Me too.
to go to Toronto. Um, and I mean, I rolled with the Skin Squad, amazing memories, amazing memories. We put on events. Natasha, I never saw you. So
But
shame on you. You're
knowing,
probably at home.
knowing Winnipeg,
Gotta save my money for Toronto.
I
you
don't know where I was. I don't
I
know
don't
what
know where you were,
you
but you were saving your
probably
money for Toronto.
knowing Winnipeg, you probably were at a stoplight right beside Natasha. You didn't even know it, probably.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Absolutely. Probably, and also someone I dated was like your friend, but I never met you. Like there's all that kind
We
of
all
stuff.
were somehow connected.
Right.
Well, Sean, so that's it right
Way to
there.
go.
Right.
But there's just so much I got out of Winnipeg, so much. Um, but I remember when my mother was alive, she would always say, "Let's move to Toronto." And this was about high school, so like early '90s. And I vehemently said, "No, my friends are here. I can't move." And yeah, that would be interesting, man, coming to Toronto at high school age.
Yeah.
Because the one thing I will say here about Toronto, Natasha and Sean,
Mm.
is that I had a hard time making friends. I had a real challenge. So the friends I was able to make were from church or work. That was it.
Mm.
Because it's about uh, social reoccurrence, like the place you keep on seeing the same people over and over. It's not a meeting. It's not that I have to meet you there. It's that this is where I'm going, and you're also going there too. We have a common or a mutual reason for being there. But I had a hard time making friends here, like like striking up conversations in the gym, um, talking to girls like don't even bother because they always think you're hitting on them. So I was like, I just had a hard time.
Mm.
But over time, slowly made friends, and but I've met people who've moved to Winnipeg who also had a real struggle making friends.
Right.
That shocked me,
Yeah.
and I think there was a couple of guys who were introduced to me from mutual friends and said, "Hey, Kwame, can you help my buddy here, like to meet people in Winnipeg?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, no problem." And I was like, "Hey, everybody, this is Steve," and they're like, "Oh, okay." And then that was it. And he was like, "Man, I've been here for 3 years, no, 2 years,"
Yeah.
and this guy was struggling, and I didn't understand it until I went back in 2017, and I struggled to make new friends. I struggled. So Drake has a song where it says, "No new friends." It's super true. And I think the reason why is you get to a certain age in your life where you're like, I'm good. right? It took me 10 years to trust this guy. It took me 4 years to know where this guy lives. So I don't want any more friends,
Yeah.
right? Because I have to vet you and go through trials with you. So I get it now. I think I'm kind of at that spot where I'm kind of like no new friends.
Yeah.